What's good? Welcome to another episode of Art Power. Today we'll be reacting to a painter, Brenda, and her art. Don't need to say much here. Let's get into it.
I mean, I've been painting for many, many years, and I think one painting comes out of the next. And so I'm always learning something new and trying to refine it. And so you hit a point where, in the beginning you might be competing with the old masters, and now I'm only competing with my last body of work. So it's like, I did this, and
I think that's the mentality that every artist should have. Like, I know you've probably heard the famous quote, comparison is the thief of joy, but I don't know if it really resonated with you the way it should. Like, yes, it's okay to look at, not necessarily look at, but study the great artists that came before us. But if we really want to reach our best potential, and I learned this through sports, like, and I apply it to everywhere else in my life. Like, if you really want to become the best at anything, you just want to get 1% better every time you output something. You'll get a little better incrementally, and over time, you'll look up and you won't even realize the heights of the lengths of greatness that you've achieved. If you're constantly looking at other people's work, I don't necessarily think that you get there as fast because something's always missing.
that, but maybe can I push it further and fine tune the content? And so I'm always trying to do that image that is telling some kind of truth of what my truth is at the moment. In the same way, as a child, I was always trying to come up with that drawing that was what I would be. So my name is Brenda Zlamani, and we're here in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I live in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and part-time in Calabria, Italy. I was born in New York City. So I'm a painter, and I've been painting pretty much. I started going to art school when I was 13. Actually, my earliest recollection of wanting to be an artist was when I was in Catholic school. I was probably in first grade, so I was probably 5 or 6, and they asked us what our career choices were, and my first choice was to be a nun, and they told me that you're left-handed, you cannot be a nun. And then my second choice was to go to the moon, and they said, oh no, that's for boys. So my third choice was to be a painter. So I am doing my third choice career. But actually, I think it was the better choice. I could have been a good nun because I'm a focused person and I'm super obsessive, and I think I had the qualities of a nun, but they didn't want me, so that's their loss. And I don't think I would have been a good astronaut because I think there's a lot of military stuff involved with going. It's not just going to the moon, there's other stuff that sounds less fun. But I would like to go to space. But anyway, so yeah, so I've been doing it for a long time. Nobody really knows why, but I think in every classroom there is the kid who can draw what they see. And I was that kid. But also, because I was a lefty and I wasn't allowed to use my left hand, I was a mirror writer with my right hand. So it made me very dyslexic. So actually, I couldn't read and write until I was about 8. And the nuns were very, very much against me because of, sinister, the left hand and stuff. So the only way I could actually win approval was to.
I wonder where that left-handedness, like, hate stems from, you know? This is probably completely unrelated and not a valid argument, but is it because left-handed people are naturally seen to like be more defiant and creative? And when I say defiant, I mean is that you unintentionally go against the world because you view the world or use the world or interact with it with the hand that's outside of the majority. I don't know. Tell me in the comments if you think I'm crazy, but this is what I'm thinking.
be the one who could draw. And because then they, for Christmas and Easter and decorating the church and doing the windows, I was the person who was pulled out. So I think I started drawing really early, and I took it really serious. It was like a mode of survival because I was so abused by the nuns. And I had a little religion as a child that I mean, I'm not going to go into my unhappy childhood, but I had this thing that the drawing that I drew at night, if I died in my sleep, I would become that. So every night it would be the race to draw the perfect family and the perfect drawing. And then if I died in my sleep, I would be reincarnated into that drawing. So I think I made art like my life depended on it very, very early. And I never lost that urgency. Well, I didn't think I would live past I remember when I turned 13 thinking that I can't believe I'm 13 and I haven't had a childhood. And then I never thought I would live past 21. So I don't think I ever envisioned a future because I didn't think I would live that long. But I am alive, and so that's good. And now that I am alive and I'm older, I really, I think about people like Alex Katz, who's right over here, and he's like 98 and he's still painting and he's in great physical condition. And now, I really want to be painting till I'm 100. I want to keep this going. It's gonna work. People think, oh, you have to paint the portrait. Well, no, it's the math. It's the math in the rectangle. If you get the math right, the portrait is extra. It's all, the composition carries the psychology. That's why I'm working on this whole angle. Yes, I do have to paint him nicely, but if I get this right, I'm already halfway there, if not more, because this sweep is doing the work. It's doing the heavy.
That's the part of drawing that I'm getting used to. It's the mathematical measurements, and I naturally just want to eye it. But as I'm going through these workbooks and I'm teaching myself how to draw, is how meticulous they are with 90-degree angles and all the other stuff, as an artist. The other things that accompany, the measurements and the square boxes and the circles and
heavy lifting of carrying this portrait of Frank, of talking about who he is. So yeah, I think I have many different goals, actually. There are personal goals that have to do with each painting, what I'm trying to achieve in a painting. But then I see myself in a discourse with art history. So to me, Vermeer is alive, and I am communicating with the great painters who have influenced my work, but I'm also in a discourse with contemporary figuration, what it can and can't do, what it can mean now. And I'm even in a discourse with technology and AI and photography. It's interesting because, as different, quicker, more mediated ways of seeing keep coming down the pike, I find that waving around a stick with a bunch of hairs on the end of it, which is what I do, becomes more powerful, actually. And so it's interesting how as more technology is developed, painting becomes more specific, more powerful, and the meaning of it changes. I'm a portraitist, obviously, so one of my goals is I paint underrepresented people. And even though these are all obviously famous artists, but I do a lot of projects where I travel. In Taiwan, I painted 888 Taiwanese Aboriginal people from direct observation. I'm just working on a project with my ancestral village in Calabria, which is depopulating, and I want to make an opera that involves the faces and the music. But so I'm interested in paying attention with painting to people who normally are not seen through painting, because usually portraiture is for aristocracy and political figures. So I'm interested in who you've seen. Like, I'll tell you a story. Like, I was invited by the prince in Saudi Arabia to spend a month in the Camel Festival, and I did 2 portraits, one of like this, you know, high level guy who had camels that were competing, like this billionaire. And then I painted this guy from Syria who was a camel hand, but he was just great looking. And you know, and these are the people who are at the bottom of the society. And all the Saudi people were like, why did you paint him? Like, why him? And he couldn't even believe I painted him. Like, I really want to explore the meaning of, it's not just about getting a likeness and painting a face, it's about who gets painted when and how and in what context is it shown. That really interests me. Well, I have different bodies of work that are made in different ways, but I almost always, for complicated compositions, I start out with cutouts, and I make hundreds of them, sometimes thousands, and I move them around. And I don't draw on paper. I mean, I draw the cutouts, and they're like paper dolls, and I move them around until the composition works. I think for portraiture, people think that it's how it's painted in the face, but for me, it's very important that the mathematics and the composition are working to create a certain emotional moment. So I move things around on paper forever. I look at it, I live with it, and then when I'm finally sure, sometimes I spend more time moving the cutouts around, and then I transfer it to the canvas and start painting the painting. Well, I work, well, I have different projects that are different things. Like in the Itinerant Portraitist, that's all watercolor from direct observation, and that's not a cutout process. That's the subjects sit for me, and I interview them and I film them while I'm painting them, and I use the camera lucida to get the outlines, and I move really quickly. So that's kind of like, it's sort of like training myself to see quickly. Like, I'm just actually hanging on for dear life. Like, I'm just like, they're sitting there and I have to get a likeness and I have to have them not be disappointed. And it's all happening really in real time. So that's one project, so that's only watercolor. And then with the paintings, they're oil paintings always. But I start out with the cutouts, so that's pencil. And sometimes I'll do an underpainting in acrylic if it's super complicated, just to move it along. But I don't even know if it actually speeds it up, because I think the color in acrylic is so bad but it actually, sometimes if it's a complicated design, just getting a lot of color down really quickly in an underpainting, I will do in acrylic. And then I'll finish in oil, and then I'll either glaze it with tinted glazes or I will not, depending on what I want the painting to do. Even though I don't really have a training, I mean, I went to school during the 70s, so that was more like feminism and being on stage. I studied with Judy Chicago. I did have Lester Johnson. He was a real painting teacher, but really painting was pretty much out of fashion by the time I got to art school, and it was considered like the white male language, and girls weren't supposed to do it. So I think of myself as self-taught as a painter, but it's interesting because, so in my mentor series, I'm painting Frank Bowling, and people might say, why is Frank Bowling one of your mentors? He's an abstract artist. But I had him at Skowhegan in '84 when I was trying to teach myself how to paint in a classical style. And he's really into materials, and we would be making black oil and trying to figure out what Rembrandt used, and he would refer to Rembrandt as Remy. And it was just, even though he's not a classical figurative painter, he knows an awful lot about materials, and he really encouraged me to push the materials. Yeah, I mean, I love paint. I don't use any, it's funny because I don't use any chemical colors in my palette. So I think I am kind of a purist, but it's partially because I use a very limited palette, and so I don't even use brown. I don't use any black in my palette, and I don't use any brown. I just really use a full cadmium, sometimes even cadmium green. I'll use ultramarine blue, ultramarine violet, and I'll mix my dark. My darkest dark is a made dark, but it does read as black. Like this is not black, but it is reading as black, but I don't actually have a tube of black paint. But it's not because I'm a purist, it's because if you make all your own colors, you know that they will interact together because they're all made of the same stuff. And you know how I know how cadmium red will behave, and sometimes when you accidentally buy a fake tube of cadmium and you start mixing it, it won't behave properly, even though when you squeeze it out of the tube, it looks like it might be cadmium. So, I mean, I think pure pigments are predictable in how they behave. So that's how, so it's not being a purist, it's more just controlling the materials.
1,75 Billionen. So viele Suchanfragen erledigt Algolia jedes Jahr, egal was ihre Kunden.
I mean, I think right now I'm super focused on people. Before, I mean, at different times I've been focused on different things, and I'm very much interested in, okay, take the Mona Lisa, the way the landscape informs her. Like if you took the landscape away, it's a very different image. Right now I'm very much interested in how landscape changes an image. Previously, all of my portraits were on monochrome backgrounds, and I was really focused on like, what does color do? Like I did a whole series of portraits of Evander Holyfield, the same image, but I started with a white background, yellow, red, blue, black, just to see how like, as you change the color of the paint, one edge went to being the contrast edge, like when it was white and black, then it was black on black. And I wanted to see how changing the color changed the meaning of the image. Right now I'm really interested in how landscape can inform a portrait. So I think I'm always interested in portraiture for like probably the last 30 years, but I'm always trying to figure out who can be seen and how different things can influence the psychology. And these are all people that I've met all over the world. And I'm interested in how to paint people from other cultures and other places, not sentimentally, but respectfully, but like, okay, take my own village right now. Like, one of the reasons I'm off to a slow start painting them is these are my own, like my village in Calabria, it's a bunch of mountain people who are agricultural. And I want to paint them, but I don't want to paint them in a way that's nostalgic or sentimental. And so I have to figure out how to see them in a way that is correct, in a way that says something that is not exploitative, that's not nostalgic, that's not, I don't know, it's very complicated. You might think, oh, you're just painting a portrait, paint the person, but it's not like that. You have to figure out how to see them and what are you saying. And half the battle is figuring that out. And it's particularly complicated in my own village because these people are actually me. And it's my own past. And so I don't have the objectivity, I don't have the distance. I can't objectify them. So I'm always struggling with how to see someone because it's not about portraying, it's about what am I saying. And I guess I want to add something to it is like, I mean, I am a social person in some ways, but actually I'm really not. Like for me, portraiture is the way that I interact with people. So in some weird way, for me, the painting is the greater reality than the person. Once I've painted someone, that's the real person and the real experience. And if they like change their hair or lose weight or something, I feel like they're not being true to the real thing, which is the painting. And when they die, that's incredibly complicated. But so maybe my thesis is having access to people. Okay, advice for young artists. I think, okay, if you're in school still and you have other skills, I would say do that instead. Unless you're like independently wealthy. If you're independently wealthy or if somebody's gonna support you, it doesn't matter what you do, so go ahead and do it. But it's not an easy life, so I would say if you don't have a burning desire, like a really burning desire, and if all things depend on it, don't do it. But if you do it, I would say, like, I've seen.
My advice here would be to, if you want to be an artist, or if you want to be anything in life, like we live in an era where you can monetize every aspect of being creative, from live streaming to YouTube to setting up your own store to doing commissions. There's tons of different ways to make money doing anything on the side. You know, the internet has really removed the barriers and difficulty of anybody from everywhere to profit. Now, how you profit is personal, right? Because what a creative must know, it has to know that, yeah, what we're creating or what we're making is our interpretation of the world, or what we feel like the world is missing. But the buyer buys for a completely different reason. You know, what they see resonates with them. So you have to find a way, as a creative, as an artist, as a business person, as an entrepreneur, as a human being, to connect with other people and to let your work connect with other people. And you do that through storytelling. You do that through being consistent. You do that through being someone that people can fall in love with, right? Without the fear of you disappearing on them. And you do that. That's why a lot of people and creators and business people know that, yeah, the experience is important, but being consistently the same, or being consistently there and present, is just as important. So this is what I would say about this topic of her saying that if you want to be an artist and you have other skills, do that. I think success leaves clues, right? And success is personal, you know, it means something different for every person. But if you want to be an artist, if you have a calling to be an artist, I'll say, then it's important to learn business and learn how to communicate your value through storytelling that incites emotion in people when you speak, because that is what they will fall in love with, and that is what will make them support you. You know, they will want to. You won't have to ask. That's my 2 cents on this.
Seen so many things come in and out of fashion. Like, I mean, I've seen people in the Whitney Biennial 30 years ago who nobody's heard of today, who were like superstars. So I know how it goes. Like, if you can't do it for yourself, I mean, obviously you need to be in discourse with other artists. That's part of the life, and it's part of what's exciting. And I love art, and I love other artists, and I love the community. But if you're not your first primary audience, I think you really run the risk of being disappointed, because you'll be in fashion, you'll be out of fashion. You have to be immune to that. You have to be painting for yourself. And I think, you know, like everything, I think like one of the keys to success is to stick with what is the thing you actually want to do. Like, I mean, authenticity is a creepy word probably, but I think if you are true to yourself, you will have the higher chance of making the best work. I don't think you can game the system. I don't think there's a way to. I didn't go to art school for college. I mean, I went to Wesleyan. It's a good school for ideas. I did, you know, I mostly did academics, and I was a studio art major, but I think it's very important for artists to know how to think. I think technique will take care of itself. I mean, technically, I'm self-taught. I think if I was, I taught for 2 semesters at New York Academy of Art, and I actually, as much as I support the school, I think that kind of training, I mean, I didn't have that kind of training. Like, nobody taught me like what was Vermeer's palette, what was, like, you know, Velasquez's palette. Like, I think I think it's better to be technically self-taught so that you are a little more quirky and original, and to be more intelligent. That's what I would recommend to someone who was pre-college. Like, go to a good university that has a handful of good art teachers, but learn how to think and read books and learn how to do math and learn how to function so you can do your taxes and, you know, buy real estate early. So yeah, so this is an example of a painting with a lot of math in it. So this is David Hockney painting my daughter, but I'm painting him. And
I'm interested to know, like, I'm interested to know, like, your perspective on what she just said. Like, do you believe that? Do you believe that I'm having Wi-Fi troubles? But do you believe that art is difficult? It's a difficult field. It definitely is a different lifestyle, you know, because you eat what you kill in a sense. You're not really guaranteed a certain paycheck every 2 weeks or every month. It's kind of like you kind of have to have like a hustler spirit, which is the opposite of creativity, right? To be in a place where you're seeking out commerce. It's like, in my opinion, the complete opposite. But you have to develop that side of yourself as an artist, you know.
Came out of a dream. I had, when he was painting her, he didn't want me taking photos in the studio. And I felt that that was really unfair because she was my daughter and she's my muse, and I felt like, so I took a few snapshots with my iPhone, but then I had this dream that not only was I taking photos, but I was actually not, I was painting him, painting her. So this is based on the Velázquez painting, but you can see, like, this painting isn't a possible painting. Like, there's no way this could all work together. It has like 5 different perspective systems, but because the math is so good, like everything is parallel and it's correct, I'm actually getting away with it. So that's what I mean when I talk about math. If you get the math right, everything works, and you could sort of see, like, his cigarette and my brush are parallel. There's a kind of logic to this painting that allows me to basically get away with murder in terms of perspective. And so that's what I wanted to say about the math. And here you can see, here's the painting. And because I'm dyslexic, I use a mirror when I paint. So here's the mirror, so I'm painting so you see the self-portrait. And then I put this green background, so I'm in a different color situation. And then when David saw this painting, he said, so here's my daughter. I think she looks more like that than she looks like the way he did it, but he painted her to look like her dad because her dad is his good friend. And I sent him the image of the painting and he said I did a better job on her. But I think I did because I know her better. She's my muse. But anyway, so this was done during COVID, and what this painting is about is during COVID, she was well adjusted. Like, I'm like freaking out, can I go to the mailbox? And so the stilts have to do with like being adjusted. And I'm the little figure who hasn't gotten on the stilts, and I'm like, what the fuck? And she's like walking away. She never even got COVID. And she's a party animal, like, you know, and I was, you know, so this is sort of was a metaphor about like the new life and how she's adjusted and I'm not. But she's also we're both in this, so this is called Road to Nowhere. And it's everybody I've ever known and loved, including painting people. So for me, people in paintings are alive. So this is Pierrot by Watteau, and then we've got some Picasso figures. And then these are people I've met in my travels. But here I am, and here's Una when she danced at School of American Ballet in her costume for Firebird. And this is Leonardo Drew, the sculptor. Yeah, there's a Picasso over here. And these are people from Saudi Arabia, Africa, you know, just different places I've been. And I sort of put us all in this procession. I like this Mantegna Road to Nowhere where everything is on this picture plane. There's no real space and it's all kind of collaged in an illogical way. So yeah, so that was that. So these paintings were done in Newfoundland. When I go on artist residencies, and I go on a lot of artist residencies, I try to do something different that I've never done before. So this was in Newfoundland, and I was chasing icebergs, and I decided to do the Rake's Progress. Sorry that they're sideways, but I started out with like, this one is Stranger in a Strange Land. I decided to use figures from the history of art as self-portraits. So they're stand-ins for my emotional state, and to use the landscape to talk about how I was feeling. So this was The Arrival, Stranger in a Strange Land. This is Watteau. This is Sargent. I'm just like toasting to the environment, like I'm gonna do this. This is like facing my demons. Here I am as Pope Innocent, and I'm realizing like actually I have like all this emotional baggage. This is Caravaggio, where I just like cut to the chase. I'm beheading, I'm gonna do it. And then here is Whistler, like just seeing your double side. Then I've gotten actually all of these done, and I become Napoleon. I am the hero, the conquering hero, but also it's Napoleon. And then suddenly I realize, actually, as I find myself in the landscape, I have to give in, and I become Marat, and I realize that I am the iceberg. And so I then go out and start chasing icebergs, and then I realize not only am I the iceberg, but this is the iceberg I am. This one, I mean, there were so many icebergs, and you know, you think about Church's icebergs and heroic icebergs. I am not that iceberg. I am this one that's a little bit funny, a little bit like a cartoon character with this bright colors. So, so this was my progress of self-realization through the Newfoundland landscape and through the history of, through the canon, becoming the iceberg. So, I mean, how do I think of these things? Who knows? Like, why? I don't know. But this work is allowing me to put the mentors in the landscape, because this was the first time where I really put figures in the landscape that way. So I get a lot out of residency. So now I've got Frank as fire, David as water, and Alex is gonna be wind. And I think this kind of, so I'm using the landscape to talk about their work and how I see them and what they mean to me. You know, like actually Frank Bowling as my teacher, as a young art student at Skowhegan, I mean, he really had the passion. He was the fire. And there's a lightness to Alex that, you know, wind. I mean, I always admire Alex Katz because he can do it with so little. Do you know what I mean? Like for every 1,000 strokes I have, he can do it in one. It's like, so, I mean, so I'm just talking about different figures in the history of art. But I couldn't have done this without the Newfoundland paintings, because that's when I figured out that you can take a figure and put it in a landscape and make it work, and then have that landscape tell the story. Well, take Rembrandt, for instance. Rembrandt will do 1,000 strokes, but those final strokes are fast on top. You do finally have to open it up. And when I had Frank Bowling as my teacher, I remember I was at Skowhegan and I was doing a big painting of a ray fish, and he came in with his knife and scraped the whole canvas off. I was 24 years old, I was mortified. But he just said, you need to learn how to turn edges and you need fewer strokes. And he just scraped it all off. And I mean, it was powerful to have someone do that. I'll never forget that. Yeah, I have the painting, and it's a good painting, but I really did learn. I mean, so Frank was a great teacher for me. So yeah, here he is. I'm just about to get started on this. This is tonight's project. I've been drawing this for about 2 weeks, and you could see these were the runners up, those two poses, but this is the pose I want, talking about mathematics. I like the way you go through and his gaze goes here. I'm thinking about the corners. He's sitting in a chair that's gonna be all rainbow colors. His wife is the feminist artist, Rachel Scott. Working on Frank, I spent a day in the studio with him, watching him paint. I hadn't seen him, well actually I'd seen him a little bit
It's so interesting, her process, how she draws and cuts them out and rearranges to kind of get a better feel for the, hey, I'm losing the word. Starts with the C. It starts with the C. Composition. To get the whole composition correct is in contrast to what I've watched before previously outside of this series of artists who draw digitally and then use a projector to project it onto the painting, and then they trace from there. It's completely different. I haven't seen it quite like this before, and it's interesting. You know, it's definitely something that I'm going to integrate into like my thought process when approaching a project.
Various openings, but I hadn't really, like at Skowhegan, you live together for 9 weeks, everybody's living together. So I got to spend a whole day with him, and then I took like, a couple hundred photos, and then I'm just like studying the poses and playing with them on rectangles and trying to think like, what does it say? And you can see I trying out different heads, like, what can this go here? What if I change the gaze? So this is the way I draw. I don't really draw on paper. I make paper dolls and I move them around until I get the composition right. And even like within a figure, like I've got these boys right, except, I might decide, what if he was like a little bit smaller so that this angle was a little better? So I'm making him smaller, and I'm making him a little bigger. So even within what seems to be like a single image, I might make hands bigger or smaller, change hands. So I'm just sort of fooling around with it. So when I get it on the canvas, I feel like if I get it all right, the painting will, none of it's easy, but if I get it all right, it will be easier. So that's what I'm trying. So here's, so this is the process. But I'm ready now to start him. And once I start him, it's going to be really fun. I think I can do this painting in 6 weeks if I really focus. Because there's a lot of detail because of that chair. And then also he's got these suspenders. And I'm going to have, I want to have, I think that's the background I'm going to go with. I want to have some sort of stripy images of his paintings. So yeah, I think it's going to be, we'll see. I'd like to get like the full underpainting with all the color on the canvas in 10 days. So at least I can see if it's working. I want to see it in color quickly. If you don't collect, how do you expect collectors to collect you? You have to, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like collect art, even buy your friends, early on. But I think it's important to be a collector. Otherwise, why would anybody buy your work? You have to show them that living with art is important to you. So I've got like some Hockneys. I've got Ad Reinhardt. Ad Reinhardt is super important to me. I've got Lucian Freud. We have Picassos. We've got different things from, the first money I made, I bought these at Sotheby's, I think for $5,000, this set of 10 Ad Reinhardts, and that was like the most expensive thing I ever bought at that time. I bought those probably when I was 25. This is Lyle Ashton Harris and I.K. Uday. That's an earlier painting. And this is Morris. Oh, this is interesting. I'll show you something interesting. So this is Morris Payne, my daughter's father. And let me just put the light on here. Hold on. So this is a David Hockney of Morris Payne. So you could see, and that's actually a really good image of Morris. But you could see it's the same guy looking at each other. Those are Hockneys of me. When I was like, okay, I'll tell you what year this is. This is 98. I still think I don't look that old. Like, I'm like 30 in that, but, and then my favorite subject is my daughter Una. I paint her constantly. And this is when she was 5, this is when she was 7, but there's a lot of images of her. This is a Jeff Koons dog. These are, I think, Kenny Sharp. We've got a lot of Kentridge. I'm a big Kentridge fan. This is a Julian Schnabel portrait that he did of me on the beach in '83. That's weird, right? You weren't even born, right? When I had short hair.
Damit's funktioniert, Husqvarna.
Those are Picassos. Una's dad, instead of child support, gave her Picassos of dirty images, inappropriate for a child. And this is a Lucian Freud of Leigh Bowery. So yeah, so we have a mixture. I actually have a much bigger collection than this, but there's only so much wall space. But I do like living with other people's work. There's a funny story about this one. So this is a David Hockney from his terrace, from his balcony in West Hollywood. And this is a painting I did of him on that balcony. So it's the same railing and sort of the same stuff. So I kind of like having his version of that place. And so in my collection, there's a lot of things that are intended to inform each other. Like, I'll show you another thing that might be interesting. Let me just turn on this light. So the Evander Holyfield, so I was telling you that I did 5 versions. Here's 2 versions, the blue and the black. And they're very much informed by these Ad Reinhardts. So my collection tends to inform my work. It's things that matter to me, and inspire me. I like living with other people's art. I'm really totally into William Kentridge right now. I've got a lot of Kentridges. I'll show you what I've got here. I've got his typewriters. And here's the first Una and the second Una. This is Leonardo Drew. I've painted him a lot. But yeah, I think I'm really interested in William Kentridge because I'm starting to do more installation stuff with music. And I feel like, I just feel he's brilliant. I love his work. Yeah, he's incredible. Yeah, so I would say he's the person who I'm taking the most inspiration. He's the person I could most stand to learn from right now. Yeah, I took a bunch of photos of him. I was thinking of painting him.
Powerful. It's funny how photography and words and paintings do stamp moments of time, so that's a proper name for this publication or this online platform. So them as well, make sure you follow me, and I'll see you next episode. Oh, before you go, I want to talk to you about a takeaway I took from this. And she mentioned she loves to paint people who wouldn't necessarily get the spotlight shown on them. I think that's a beautiful thing because everybody is so important, for sure.